Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Milledgeville Public Library of Illinois' Facebook page. We have a story for you today. This story comes from Arabia or Persia, somewhere in that area. Long, long ago, there was a king who had his queen do something that he really didn't like, and so he killed her, and he decided to marry a new girl every day and kill her the next morning. And one girl decided that this was not a good plan. And so she started telling the king stories at night and leaving them in the middle of the story so that the king would leave her alive for one more night. And the stories that she told him are part of a collection that we have now that it's called 1001 Nights. And this story comes out of that collection. This is the story of Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves. Once long ago in Persia, there lived a man named Ali Baba. And Ali Baba had a brother named Qasim. Now, Qasim and Ali Baba were as different as night and day. Ali Baba was a kind, gentle man who was always ready to help anyone that needed help. Qasim was a greedy and ambitious man, and he got a hold of things and he kept them and he never gave them away. Now Qasim, he married a rich wife and he set up a shop in the bazaar and he became even richer. Ali Baba, he married a woman that he loved and they had a son, and they were very poor. They lived on the outside of the town in a tumble-down house, and Ali Baba worked as a woodcutter. So one day, every day, Ali Baba would go into the woods and he would cut the dead wood that he found on the ground. He would cut it up in pieces and he would bring it back to the town and he would sell it to people to use in their cooking fires. And in the winter, sometimes they needed fires to keep their houses warm and that sort of thing. Well, one day, as Ali Baba went into the woods to find to gather the wood so that he could sell it in the town, he was gathering the wood and he was near a big rock, a big cliff face that he had never been near before. And as he looked up, as he was loading the wood on his donkey, he looked up and he saw a cloud of dust coming down toward him. And he thought, well, that's very strange. That's not normal in the forest to see that. And it got closer. And it got closer, and suddenly he could see off in the distance that there were men riding on horseback in that cloud of dust. And all of a sudden, Ali Baba knew what was coming. Oh, Allah. Oh, they're robbers. They're murderous robbers. They're going to kill me for what little I have. And so he took his donkey and he hid it behind some big, thick bushes. And he climbed up in a tree to try to hide until those murderous robbers would go away. Well, you can imagine how terrified he was when those robbers came riding down the road and stopped right near where he was at. And the captain of the robbers, he came walking straight toward the tree where Ali Baba was hiding. And Ali Baba thought, oh, Allah, protect me. They have found me. They will kill me. And much to Ali Baba's surprise, as that captain of the robbers got closer to Ali Baba's tree, instead of walking up to the bottom of the tree, he walked up to the front of the cliff. It was just a solid wall of rock right there. And he walked up to the cliff and he said, "Oh, magic door, listen to me and obey the magic words. Open sesame!" And much to Ali Baba's surprise, suddenly, with the grinding sound of rock on rock, the cliff face opened up like a big door. And the captain and all of the robbers, carrying big old sacks over their shoulders, they walked into that door, and the door shut behind them. Well, Ali Baba was quite surprised and more than a little bit terrified by that bit of magic. And he was trying to decide if he should climb down and try to escape now, or if he should wait for the robbers to come back out and then try to escape, when the cliff face opened up again and the robbers came out, and the robber captain turned around and said, "Close sesame!" And the door closed. And the robbers got on their horses and they rode away. Well, Ali Baba waited a little longer, just to make sure they weren't coming back. And then he climbed down out of the tree. And he fetched his donkey from behind the bushes, and he was just about to head back to town when his curiosity got the better of him. He was wondering, would those magic words work for him? And what was inside behind that door? So he went over to the cliff face, and he said, "Open sesame!" And the door opened. With a grinding of rock on rock, it split open. And Ali Baba was very surprised. He went cautiously inside, and the door closed behind him. And when he got inside, rather than just a big, dark, empty cave, much to his surprise, he found that there was a hole in the roof of the cave. And so light came in, and he could see that what was all around him was piles and piles of boxes and bags of jewels and coins and gold bars and silver sculptures that were beautiful. They were lovely. Everything, so much riches. The riches of, well, it would take generations to spend all of that money. Ali Baba, as I said, was rather a poor man, and he was tempted. He was tempted to take some of that money, and since the robbers had stolen it from other people, then it didn't really belong to the robbers, but he was a smart man, and he knew that he couldn't take very much. And so he found a small sack, and he decided to be smart and not to try to take any of the jewels or anything like that, or any of the big gold bars. He just took some of the coins. And he put them in the sack, and he filled the sack, and he took it home so that he could maybe get a little bit better house, and maybe be able to feed his wife and his son a little bit better, and give them some clothes that weren't falling apart, and that sort of thing. And so he took the sack of coins home. Well, now when he got home, his wife said to him, "Well, how much is there?" And he said, "Well, I don't really know, because you see, we have coins now that, like, this coin is worth 25 cents. And this coin is worth 5 cents. And what kind of coin it is, that's what tells you how much it's worth." But in Ali Baba's time, if you look at these two coins, you see one of them is smaller than the other. And so the bigger coin would have been worth a lot more because there would have been more gold in it. And the smaller coin would have been worth less because there was less gold in it. The coins were worth how much they weighed, not how much, not certain amounts for certain kinds of coins. And so Ali Baba said, "I don't really know how much money is here," because he didn't know how much the coins weighed. And so his wife said, "Well, let me think. Well, Kasim is certain to have a scale that we could use to weigh the coins. So I will go to Kasim's wife and I will borrow the scale from her." And he said, "Well, that's a good idea." And so Ali Baba's wife went over to Kasim's house, and she asked Kasim's wife if she could borrow a scale. Now, Kasim's wife was almost as greedy as her husband, and she knew that Ali Baba and his wife didn't have two coins to rub together. So what on earth could Ali Baba's wife possibly be wanting to weigh in the scales? So Kasim's wife, she was a clever woman. She took some heavy grease and she smeared it in the bottom of one of the containers for the scale. And she was hoping that something would get stuck in there and that she would be able to find out what Ali Baba's wife was weighing. Well, sure enough, when the scales came back, there was a small gold coin stuck in the bottom of the scale. And Ali Baba and Kasim's wife took that coin out of that scale, and she said, I They should not have coins like this. They should not have gold coins, copper coins, possibly silver coins, maybe, but gold coins, no, 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 no. And so she went running off to Kazim, and she told Kazim what she had found. And Kazim, he was very interested in that as well. So he went straight to his brother's house, and he badgered Ali Baba, and he bothered Ali Baba, and he asked Ali Baba, and he ordered Ali Baba, and he yelled at Ali Baba, until Ali Baba finally said, "Oh, very well, Kazim, very well. This is where I got the coin." And he told Kazim the whole story of the robbers and how they had come and how there were 40 of them, and they'd gone into the mountain, and the magic word was open sesame. And then when you went into the mountain, the door closed behind you, and he had taken the coins, and then he had said open sesame again, and the door opened, and when he went out, he said close sesame, and the door closed. Well, as I said, Kazim was a very greedy man. And so Kazim went back to his house, and Kazim got all 12 of his donkeys and as many sacks as he could find. And he went out into the forest, and he went to the cliff face, and he said, open sesame. And he went into the cavern with all of his sacks, and he left all the donkeys outside. And he went in with his sacks, and he was so excited with all of the riches that he saw there that he completely forgot that the door was closing behind him. And he went about stuffing all of his sacks with gold and jewels and gold bars and everything he could find. The most valuable things he could find, he put them in the sacks, and he put them by the door. And when he had filled all of his sacks, he went to the door, and he said, open, oh dear. Open carrots. No, that's not right. Open cabbages. No, that's not right either. Open fennel. No. Open falafel. Oh, bother, it's a food. Let's see. Open oranges. Didn't matter what Kazim tried, he could not remember the magic words to open the door of the cavern. He was stuck. He was stuck in there all night long. Well, in the morning, as Kazim was still trying to think of what the word was to open that door, he heard a pounding of hoofbeats outside. Oh dear. He thought he might know what that meant. That meant the robbers were back. Oh, he did not want to get caught in the thieves' cavern when they came back so he hid behind some sacks in the corner. But you know, those thieves, they were not stupid. They saw those 12 donkeys standing outside, and they knew someone was in their cavern trying to rob them. And so the robber captain came up to the door, and he said, open sesame! And in the corner, Kazim thought, that was it. That was the word I was looking for. But it was too late. And those robbers, they swarmed over that cavern, and they checked every single inch of it until they found Kazim hiding. And they brought him out, and the robber captain said, you would try to steal from us, would you? That is not allowed. And he killed Kazim right then and there. And they left his body laying in the cavern across all of those sacks that he had brought with him and filled up with all of their stolen treasure. Well, when Kazim did not come home that night, nor even the next morning, his wife went to Ali Baba and said, I think something has happened to Kazim. He took all the donkeys and as many sacks as he could find, and he left, and he has not come back, and he's been gone all night. And Ali Baba, he had a feeling he knew exactly what had happened. So he went out with his donkey, and he went straight to that cavern, made sure the robbers weren't around. He went straight to the cavern, and he checked. He opened the door, open sesame, and sure enough, he found Kazim's body inside the cavern. And so he took Kazim's body, and he said, oh, my brother, I only took what I needed to keep my family fed and clothed and to give us a little bit better house. Your greed, my brother, it has killed you, and I am sorry. And so he took Kazim's body back to the city, and they had a funeral and they buried him. Well, when the robbers got back to the cavern later with their next round of loot, the body of Kazim was gone. And so the captain of the robbers knew that someone else other than Kazim must know their secret. Someone else had been there. And so they decided they needed to go into town and find out who it was. That man that they had killed must have a father or a brother or a son or someone who had come back and claimed the body. And they needed to kill whoever else knew about where their loot was kept. Well, the problem was, can you imagine what the problem was? Problem was they were robbers. And they were wanted in the town because they'd been stealing things from people. So they had to disguise themselves. So what the robber captain decided is he would disguise himself as an oil merchant. And oil merchants carried these big jugs on either side of their donkeys. And they would carry them around with them, and they would sell oil out of the pitchers to people. And so the big jug, those were big enough to put people in. And so he put 39 jugs with all of the other 39 of his thieves in them. And then one jug was actually filled with oil. And he put all of the robbers in them, and he disguised himself as a merchant. And then he walked down the road with those donkeys behind him, those 20 donkeys with the 40 jugs on them. 39 of them had a thief in them, and one had oil. And they walked down the road. And when he got to the town, he started asking around and finding out if anybody had had a family member who had passed away recently. And they found out that it was Ali Baba. His brother had died just recently. And so the robber captain, he went down the road looking for Ali Baba's house. And when he found it, it was a newer and better house than the old tumble-down shack. When he found it, he went up and he knocked on the door. And the person who answered the door was a servant who had been working for the family for quite some time. For a long time, she just worked for her room and her board, for some place to sleep and something to eat. But now she was actually working for a little bit of money, which was very nice. And her name was Morgiana. Now, Morgiana loved the Ali Baba and his family very much because they'd been taking care of her for such a long time. And when she answered the door. The captain of the robbers, who was disguised as the oil merchant, said, "I'm a merchant and I've come from a long, far way away and I need some place to stay. Would your master have a place that I could sleep tonight?" Now, in that country, it wasn't common to have hotels for people to sleep in. A lot of times, if you were a visitor to town, you just knocked on someone's door and asked if you could stay there for the night. And if they had room for you, they would let you stay there. And Ali Baba had room for the merchant, and so they put all of those those big jugs full of oil, but really full of thieves. They put those jugs in the stable with the 20 donkeys, and the oil merchant stayed in the house. Well, they were having dinner that night, and Morgiana got a good look at that oil merchant, and he just didn't seem quite right to her, but she wasn't really sure why. And I finished dinner and they all went to bed, except for Morgiana. She was working on some stuff in the kitchen, and so she was up a little bit later than other people, and all of a sudden, her lamp went out. Now, the lamps in that time, in that place, had oil inside of them, and then you would put a little wick inside like a candle has, and they would light the wick, and it would slowly burn up the oil that was inside the lamp. So she had run out of oil in her lamp, and she didn't have any more. But then she remembered there was an oil merchant staying with them. And so she thought, well, I'll just go borrow a dipper full out of the oil merchant's barrel. And when he, when they wake up in the morning, I'm certain my master will pay him for it. That will not be a problem. Well, what Morgiana did not know is that after dinner, the oil merchant had gone out to the stable to check on his donkeys, is what he said. But what he really had done is gone out there and tapped down all those barrels with all the rest of the thieves in it and said, "All right, men, now listen up. We're going to bed now. And just after midnight, I will come back out here and I will tell you it is time, and you will get up and you will come with me into the house and we will kill Ali Baba and his whole family, and that way nobody will know where our hidden treasure is." So when Morgiana ran out of oil in her lamp and she went out into the stable, she was quite surprised to suddenly hear a voice say, "Is it time yet?" Well, donkeys don't talk, and neither do jars full of oil. So Morgiana knew that there must be people in those jars. And she suspected that there was a plot against her master. And so she made her voice as deep as she possibly could, and she said, "No, not quite yet. I will tell you when it is time." And then she quickly tiptoed back into the kitchen. When she looked around the kitchen, she wasn't quite sure what to do. But then she got an idea. You see, over in the corner, there was a large jar of fat. And fat was something that they used sometimes for cooking in and things. Instead of putting butter or oil in the bottom of a pan, they would put a little bit of fat in the bottom of a pan to grease the pan. And so she had a lot of it accumulated from several of the meals and things that they had made. And so she took that jar of fat and she put it in a big pan, a big kettle over the fire, and she melted it all down. Now, when fat gets to very hot temperatures, it can burn you very, very badly, and it can even kill people. And so she took that large kettle full of fat, and she had it boiling and very, very hot. And she took it carefully, she took it out to the stable, and she set it down. And she went up to each of those jars, and she pulled off the lid, and she poured in a big ladleful of the boiling fat. And it killed all of those thieves, all 39 of them. And then she put the lids back on and she tiptoed back into the house and she went to bed. Well, a little bit later that night, the robber captain came out and he went into the room, into the stable, and he said, "Psst, hey men, it's time, let's go." But there was no answer. And he walked up to one of the jars that he knew contained one of his men, and he tapped on the side. And he said, hey, are you sleeping? Wake up, it's time to go." And there was no answer. And so he took the lid off the jar, and he saw his man had been killed. And he took the lids off all of the jars, and he found that all of the jars were full of dead thieves. And he turned around and he said, "Curses on you, Ali Baba! I'll get you yet." And he turned and he grabbed one of those donkeys and he rode off as fast as he could, because he thought that maybe, he would be next. And he would have been if Morgiana could have caught him. Well, in the morning, Ali Baba awoke and found the oil merchant gone. He was very surprised, but then Morgiana told him what had happened and showed him all of the dead men in the jars, and how there was only one jar that was full of oil. And Ali Baba was so very grateful to Morgiana for saving his life and the life of his whole family. It was wonderful. "Oh, Morgiana, you will be rewarded. We will find a good way to give you a good reward." Morgiana wasn't worried about a reward. She just liked serving her family, and she was glad that they had been saved from being killed by the evil robber captain. Well, as you can imagine, the robber captain was not happy. There was still someone else who knew where his treasure cave was, and all of his men had been killed, so he couldn't go out robbing anymore because he didn't have enough men. So he needed to protect his treasure. So he went back and he thought about it. And he decided that an easier way to do this, a better way to do this, would be to go at Ali Baba through his son. This time he would go through the son. And so he dressed himself up as a shopkeeper, and he took some of his coins and he bought a little shop, and he made sure that he made friends with Ali Baba's son. And sure enough, he made friends with them, and pretty soon they were very good friends. And Ali Baba's son went and asked his shopkeeper friend for advice on different things because the shopkeeper seemed to have pretty good advice. Well, pretty soon, Ali Baba decided he needed to invite this shopkeeper friend of his son's to come to his house for dinner to thank him for being such a good friend. And so he did. Well, when he came to the house, Morgiana let him in. But she thought that shopkeeper looked kind of familiar. And when she looked at him a little more closely, she realized it was the robber captain in disguise. Well, she wasn't sure what to do then. She knew that that man was probably here to... Yes, when she looked carefully, she could see that there was a knife under his tunic, and she was certain that that knife was probably meant for her master. So she went back to the kitchen, and she worried and she thought over it while she was finishing making dinner. And when she finished making dinner, she brought in the dinner, and she set it there in front of everyone, and she served it to everyone. And you know, the robber captain, he was busy looking at Ali Baba, and Ali Baba was busy talking to the robber captain, and Ali Baba's son was busy watching Morgiana because he rather liked her. He thought she was very pretty, and she was very kind, and he kind of liked her. Well, Morgiana, she looked at the son more than once because he was nice and he was kind and he was good looking, and she kind of liked him too. But she forced herself to keep her mind on that robber captain and how she was going to keep him from killing her master, Ali Baba. Well, she went back to the kitchen and she thought about it a little bit more, and then she came up with a plan. And just as the dinner was over and they were eating their dessert, and the robber captain was starting to finger that knife in his tunic and think about, maybe now is the time to kill Ali Baba and his son, Morgiana came into the room, followed by a young slave boy that she had brought in. And he had a tambourine. And she was dressed in all of her most beautiful, most colorful gown. And she said, "Master, I thought perhaps you would enjoy it if I danced for you and your guest." And Ali Baba said, "Oh yes, Morgiana, that would be a wonderful idea. We love it when you dance for us. Please do dance for us." And so the young boy sat down and he started playing on the tambourine, and Morgiana started dancing. Well, Morgiana was a beautiful dancer. And after a very short time, the robber captain was distracted from that knife in his tunic and was far more entranced with watching Morgiana dance. She danced and she whirled and she spun and she turned and she balanced the thing on her head while she was dancing, and she did a beautiful dance. Beautiful. And the robber captain was so entranced in watching her that he never saw the knife that came out of her waistband, and after a short while went spinning across the room and buried itself in his chest, and he fell back dead. Well, Ali Baba was very startled by this. You see, that was not the way you treated a guest in that land. And he said, "Morgiana, what have you done? People will be very upset that our guest was murdered by our servant girl. We'll have to give you over to the magistrates and have them... You murdered him. What did you do this for?" And she said, "Master, I did it to save your life. If you will look under his garment, you will see that he is carrying a knife. And if you will look under his headdress, you will see that it is the robber captain, Master. He was going to kill you. I only did what I had to save you." And when Ali Baba looked, he found that sure enough, there was a knife in the other man, under the other man's tunic. And when he lifted off the turban, he could see that it was indeed the robber captain, and that Morgiana had saved his life once again. And he said, "Morgiana, there is no reward big enough to give you. You are no longer a servant. You will no longer work for us. In fact, you will marry my son, and I will give you such riches that you will never have to want for anything ever again." Because you see, Ali Baba realized that now he was the only one who knew the secret of the treasure cave. And sure enough, Ali Baba's son and Morgiana were married, and they lived very happily, and they never wanted for anything. For you see, before Ali Baba died, he told his son the secret of the treasure cave. And the story of the treasure cave and the secret passwords and the location of that cave were passed on for generations upon generations, even into the present day. Someone somewhere knows where that cave is hidden and those secret passwords. And that family has never needed anything. They've always been able to help others and to live a good, comfortable life because they know the secret of that cave. And that is a secret passed down, and they will never tell it to anyone else because they know it's too dangerous. And that is the tale of Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves. I hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you again on Wednesday at 3 p.m. Central Daylight Time here on the Milledgeville Public Library of Illinois' Facebook page for another story. Thanks. Bye.